When we look at a globe, the bottom is always the same, a blank, featureless white smudge, a quiet block of frozen silence. But that white surface is a complete illusion. To see the true, staggering scale of this landmass, we have to compare it to something we know. It easily swallows the entire area of the United States and Mexico combined. On its surface, the environment is aggressively hostile. It is the coldest, windiest, and driest desert on Earth. That white crust is merely a blanket. It's an ice sheet that averages over 1 mile thick, and in some places it plunges down 3 miles deep, pressing millions of tons of weight onto the rock below. We are going to strip that blanket away. We are going to X-ray the entire 7th continent to look at the hidden geological skeleton trapped underneath. The ice is just a mask. Beneath it sits a highly complex, completely unseen world. When we remove the ice, we see Antarctica's naked bedrock. A massive spine emerges, the Trans-Antarctic Mountains, slicing the continent into 2 zones. Left, West Antarctica is a shattered series of sinking volcanic islands. Right, East Antarctica is a continuous plate of ancient rock. Deep inside that eastern bedrock sit the Gamburtseff Mountains. They are ghosts of the past, hiding in absolute darkness. These peaks match the size and height of the European Alps, soaring up to 2,700 meters. Yet a solid ceiling of 600 meters of ice swallows them entirely. Scientists mapped every ridge and valley without a single person setting foot on them. They flew airplanes over the surface, firing radio waves down through the ice to bounce off the stone, mapping the shapes below just like a bat uses sound to navigate a dark cave. Entire mountain ranges live in plain sight. The flat white crust we see from the sky hides the true geography of the planet. The skeleton goes far deeper than mountain peaks. To find the extremes, we have to look for the deepest scars. This is the Denman Canyon. The bedrock here plunges 3.5 kilometers below sea level. That makes it the deepest canyon located on any land surface on Earth. The bedrock isn't dry. Nearly 400 liquid lakes are trapped in the frozen dark. The most massive is Lake Vostok. It sits 4 kilometers down, trapped beneath the crushing weight of the eastern ice sheet, and it holds more water by volume than Lake Michigan. For over a decade, Russian scientists bored a hole down through the ice above it. They finally reached water that had been sealed off from the Earth's atmosphere for over 15 million years. Under extreme pressure and total darkness, this environment is a dynamic, flowing network of water. The final piece of the Antarctic skeleton is the hardest to imagine in a frozen wasteland: extreme heat. Meet Mount Erebus. It's the southmost active volcano on Earth. At its summit, a boiling lake of magma churns directly against the freezing air. Geothermal heat carves out massive ice cave networks. Inside these glowing blue caverns, the vapor keeps the temperature warm enough to comfortably wear a t-shirt. So, let's assemble the bones we have found. Towering mountain peaks, deep canyons, huge interconnected liquid lakes, and fiery active volcanoes. The next time you look at a globe, do not see a white void. See the living, dynamic geological masterpiece hiding in the dark. Look at this place. For thousands of miles, there is nothing but jagged ice, howling wind, and profound silence. It feels like the edge of the world. Because of this extreme weather, we usually picture Antarctica as a dead, boring block of ice, a frozen desert at the bottom of the globe where absolutely nothing happens. But that blank white map hides a massive secret. If you could crack open that 2-mile thick shell of ice, you would find the most perfectly preserved hidden library on our planet. To understand the actual history of Earth, we have to look past the frozen landscape we see today and find the vibrant, tropical world that was locked away millions of years ago. Let's rewind the clock about 100 million years. Back then, the entire globe was much warmer than it is today, and the landmass we call Antarctica sat slightly further north. This map shows Gondwana. Antarctica is stitched together with South America and Australia. This connected landmass and warmer climate meant temperate rainforests and meandering rivers thrived where glaciers sit today. It functioned as a vital land bridge, letting dinosaurs and ancient marsupials freely migrate. We know this lush world existed because scientists who study ancient plants keep finding the evidence. Deep beneath the current ice sheet, they have drilled into the rock and pulled up fossilized wood, perfectly preserved leaf impressions, and ancient tree pollen. This bustling ecosystem did not vanish in a sudden apocalypse. Instead, it was slowly dismantled by the mechanical, unstoppable shifting of the Earth's tectonic plates. Over tens of millions of years, South America and Australia tore away, leaving Antarctica completely isolated. The ocean rushed in to fill the gaps, creating the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, a massive, continuous flow of water circling the isolated continent at the bottom of the globe. Think of this current as an impenetrable ocean moat. It permanently blocked warm water from the equator from reaching the coastline, which trapped a layer of freezing air directly over the landmass. The temperature drop was agonizingly slow. The towering ferns and temperate forests died out, and heavy glaciers slowly crept across the landscape. The ice sheet grew to an unimaginable size. It became miles thick, swallowing entire mountain ranges whole and sealing massive freshwater lakes in total darkness. Tectonic isolation took a thriving green world and locked it away inside an impenetrable deep freeze vault, cutting it off from the rest of the world for millions of years. Today, scientists are finally reaching down into these deep layers to find out what actually happened. It is a grueling process. Researchers spend years camping in sub-zero temperatures, drilling miles straight down into the ice sheet to pull up these long, solid cylinders of frozen water. These cylinders are called ice cores, and you can think of them as the literal, physical pages of Earth's history book. Notice the tiny air bubbles trapped inside the ice layers. As snow fell and compacted over millions of years, it captured tiny pockets of the air around it. Those bubbles are perfectly preserved, untainted samples of the Earth's ancient atmosphere. By carefully measuring the gases inside those specific bubbles, researchers can determine exactly what global temperatures and carbon dioxide levels were over 1 million years ago. We often see internet rumors claiming that Antarctica froze overnight, burying an ancient human civilization. But these physical ice cores show a gradual freeze that took millions of years, long before humans even existed. The ice has kept Earth's diary safe for millions of years, and we are just beginning to read it. For centuries, the ancient Greeks hypothesized that a massive frozen landmass had to exist at the bottom of the world, simply to balance the globe against the weight of the northern continents. For most of human history, it remained the ultimate blank space on our maps. Take a close look at this document, known as the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513. Notice the intricate, detailed landmass stretching across the bottom edge. Centuries before any official recorded sighting of Antarctica, cartographers were already sketching the outlines of a southern continent. History books usually date the continent's discovery to 1820, when naval expeditions from Russia, Britain, and the United States all claimed sightings of the ice shelf within months of each other. But the ocean surrounding that ice was already a crowded industrial zone. Long before those naval officers arrived, commercial sealers had spent decades pushing further south into the freezing waters. They were hunting for seal oil and fur, turning the Southern Ocean into a lucrative global commodity market. These captains were businessmen, not scientists. If they found a new, heavily populated seal colony, they kept the coordinates quiet. A shared hunting ground was a depleted one, so captains actively hid their shipping routes and navigational logs from their competitors. Millions of seals were harvested, wiping out entire populations closer to home, and forcing these wooden ships deeper into the pack ice. Because of this competitive secrecy, an entire century of extreme southern exploration lived only in private logbooks and the memories of the crews. These private logs, protected to safeguard profits, suggest the true discovery of Antarctica was a closely guarded corporate secret long before it was a matter of national record. Once the seal populations collapsed, commerce retreated, but the empty space on the map remained, drawing a new kind of ambition. By the early 20th century, Reaching the geographic South Pole became a deadly test of national pride. Norway's Roald Amundsen won that race in 1911. He succeeded because he spent years living with Inuit communities in the Arctic. He learned to drive sled dogs and adopted loose-fitting animal furs that allowed sweat to evaporate, preventing his gear from freezing from the inside out. Britain's Robert Falcon Scott relied on naval hierarchy and outfitted his men in tight canvas clothing that offered little defense against temperatures dropping to -50 degrees. Scott and his entire polar team froze to death on the return journey. Explorers like Ernest Shackleton epitomized this era. They relied on raw physical endurance and an almost relentless willpower to drag themselves deeper into the continent. But that willpower often ended in disaster. In 1915, Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, was locked in the grip of the Weddell Sea and slowly crushed by the massive pressure of the freezing ocean. The ice did not care about courage or the flags planted in it. The failure of these expeditions proved that the Antarctic environment was too deadly to be conquered by individual ego and national pride alone. After World War II, sled dogs were replaced by diesel-powered icebreakers in aircraft. This mechanical age allowed nations to access the deep interior, bringing a massive scale of operations to the ice. Leading this charge for the United States was Admiral Richard Byrd. In 1946, he spearheaded Operation High Jump, bringing 13 ships, dozens of aircraft, and over 4,700 men south. Operation High Jump moved thousands of troops into the ice to test heavy equipment and polar combat readiness. By establishing this massive presence, the United States was securing a permanent footprint at the very onset of the Cold War. If we map out the territorial claims of this era, the escalation is obvious. 7 different countries rushed to slice the continent into pie wedges, many of which directly overlapped one another. This friction turned dangerous in 1948, when Argentine military forces fired live warning shots at British troops over a patch of disputed land on the Antarctic Peninsula. Britain immediately sent a warship in response. After sitting empty for millions of years, the continent was suddenly caught in the crosshairs of global superpowers, positioned as a potential new front for armed conflict. Terrified by the prospect of a new Cold War front, international leaders made a radical pivot. In 1959, the major powers involved in Antarctica met in Washington, D.C. to negotiate a ceasefire before the shooting could start. They signed the Antarctic Treaty. The participating nations agreed to dissolve existing territorial claims, implementing an absolute ban on military activity. Instead, the continent was reserved for science, turning the landmass into an open international laboratory. Today, researchers from rival nations live and work side by side. They drill ice cores miles deep, capturing ancient air pockets that provide a continuous record of Earth's climate history over the last million years. This arrangement transformed Antarctica into a rare global commons, where the pursuit of knowledge takes precedence over national borders and territorial ambition. However, that peace is running on a timeline. A key treaty provision protecting the environment from commercial exploitation is eligible for official review in 2048, and the rules could be entirely rewritten. Nations are already preparing for that deadline. Geological surveys have confirmed exactly what sits beneath the frozen bedrock. Because Antarctica was a warm, forested landmass millions of years ago, it holds massive, untapped reserves of oil, coal, and valuable rare earth elements. The era of commercial slaughter and fierce territorial rivalry feels like distant history. But as the ice thaws and the deadline approaches, the greed that brought us to the bottom of the world is simply holding its breath. You can think of that ice as the walls of the world's largest, most isolated vault. The contents are hidden from view, and the glacier's thickness is what keeps them secure. Beneath that frozen surface sits a collection of resources that global superpowers are already positioning themselves to access. Governments are establishing outposts and running surveys, all waiting for their chance to look inside. Right now, the extreme cold is the primary physical barrier that is preventing a massive international scramble for the land itself. Millions of years ago, before it drifted south and froze, Antarctica was part of a giant landmass that included Australia and South America. It was a green, forested world, which means it shares the same resource-rich geology as its neighbors. We are beginning to see exactly how much is down there. Recently, a Russian research ship identified an estimated 511 billion barrels of oil buried in the Weddell Sea. To put that in perspective, that single find is roughly double the total oil reserves controlled by Saudi Arabia. Controlling a supply of energy this large would provide any nation with a level of influence that could shift the balance of global power for decades. But here is the strangely fascinating part. Even though trillions of dollars worth of oil have already been mapped out, not a single commercial drill has touched the ground. To understand why this wealth remains untouched, we have to go back to 1959. At the peak of the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union were nearing a confrontation over who could claim this new territory. Instead of fighting, 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty. It was a unique diplomatic truce that banned all military activity and prohibited any mining or resource extraction on the continent. Before the treaty, 7 nations claimed overlapping wedges of territory, creating competing borders nobody agreed on. The treaty didn't erase those lines, but made them legally unenforceable. It acted like a padlock, freezing territorial demands so no one could act on them. This agreement didn't make the world's hunger for land disappear. It simply paused the competition in a state of suspended animation. However, there is a significant loophole. The treaty allows for peaceful scientific research, and today, that provision is being used by superpowers to maintain a physical presence on the ice. Today, countries like China and Russia are operating large, permanent, year-round facilities. These industrial-scale bases allow hundreds of people to live and work in the most contested regions of the continent. From a legal standpoint, building a permanent station is a way to maintain a physical footprint. If the rules ever change, the nation with the most infrastructure will have the strongest hand. Seemingly innocent projects, like mapping the seafloor with sound waves, are also being used to determine the exact size and location of the oil and gas reserves hidden beneath the water. These nations are spending billions of dollars to position their players on the board long before the main event begins. The diplomatic padlock that keeps Antarctica's resources off-limits has one major flaw: it isn't permanent. The year 2048 is the critical deadline. That is when the treaty's mining ban and environmental rules come up for a mandatory international review. If the ban is lifted, the countries that spent decades building infrastructure and mapping the oil will be the first ones ready to start extraction. For these governments, the race for Antarctica's wealth isn't a future possibility. It's an active competition that has been happening quietly for years. Environmental changes are also playing a role. As sea ice thins and melts, those massive oil deposits in the Weddell Sea are becoming much easier to reach with modern ships and drilling rigs. We are looking at a global truce that relies on everyone following the rules, while the physical barriers protecting the continent literally melt away. Antarctica is a place where the long-term interests of the world's most powerful nations are slowly pressing against one another, waiting for the legal protections to shift. The vault is still sealed for now, but the timer is counting down to 2048.